From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day, this is Dateline Malacañang, and here are the news. Malacañang said Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. directed the Department of Agriculture or DA to ensure sufficient rice supply and bring down prices amid global uncertainties. In a press briefing, Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said the President instructed Agriculture Secretary Francisco Chu Laurel Jr. to do everything possible to lower the price of rice and protect consumers. The directive was issued during the 6th Uplift Committee meeting held in Malacañang, where officials discussed measures to ensure adequate supply of key commodities, including fuel, and to sustain government services amid external pressures such as the Middle East crisis. Castro said the president also ordered authorities to go after hoarders and profiteers taking advantage of the situation. Castro added that the government would not hesitate to file cases against those found colluding to manipulate rice prices and may impose a price cap if warranted.
Pababain ang presyo ng bigas. Iyan ang utos ni Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. kay Agriculture Secretary Francisco T. Laurel Jr. Kabilang sa mga tinalakay sa nasabing pagpupulong ang mga hakbang ng pamahalaan upang tiyakin na sapat ang ating supply ng langis at pondo ng pamahalaan para tuloy-tuloy lang ang serbisyo ng gobyerno sa mamamayang Pilipino at bantayan ang presyo ng mga bilihin. Huwag hayaang may mga abuso sa sitwasyon ngayong may krisis sa Middle East. Iniutos ng Pangulo na aksyonan ang mga hoarder at nagsasagawa ng profiteering. At kapag napatunayan na may sabwatan para tumaas ang presyo ng bigas, hindi mag-aatubili ang gobyernong kasuhan ang mga sangkot at ang maaaring pagpapataw ng price cap.
Alice said the Uplift framework continues to guide a coordinated whole-of-government response to stabilize prices, safeguard consumers, and strengthen the country's economic resilience. Following the meeting, President Marcos was also scheduled to convene the 9th Economy and Development Council meeting to discuss broader strategies, including improving the country's mass transportation system through expanded railway networks.
Dateline Malacañang.
The ASEAN National Organizing Council, or NOC, said the leaders gathering for the 48th Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Summit, and related meetings in Cebu on May 8 are expected to produce key deliverables that will help steer the region in addressing the impacts of the ongoing Middle East crisis. ASEAN NOC Director General Maria Helen de la Vega, in a briefing, said the leaders would focus on energy security, food security, and the safe mobility of all Southeast Asians abroad, among others. Presidential Communications Office PCO Acting Secretary Dave Gomez, during the same briefing, also said high on the agenda is disaster resilience.
Disaster resilience is part of the agenda under which ASEAN member states commit to collaborative frameworks that enhance community-based early warning systems, rapid humanitarian response, and support for affected populations, ensuring that volcanic disasters like the one we have with the Mayon volcano today do not undermine vulnerable communities, but instead drive inclusive, people-oriented, people-centered resilience strategies among member states across the region.
Anticipated focus on this area also comes as the Philippines initiates a full government response to the ongoing unrest of Mayon volcano in the Bicol region. As the ASEAN chair, De La Vega said the Philippines would likewise continue to advance talks on economic resilience, peace and security, and people empowerment within the region. Manila, she said, would maximize the summit to reinforce security norms and dialogue, regional stability, maritime cooperation, and digital transformation, while strengthening intra-ASEAN trade and investment linkages. The summit proper will open on May 8, preceded by a series of ASEAN senior officials meetings from May 6 to May 7.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has ordered the release of 43.18 billion pesos to fund financial aid, food support, pensions, and livelihood programs for vulnerable Filipinos, the Department of Budget and Management, or DBM, said. The funds released by the DBM and coursed through the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, aim to ensure the uninterrupted and immediate delivery of social protection services amid ongoing economic pressures. He emphasized that the funding will directly support basic needs and social safety nets. The largest share, amounting to 36.87 billion pesos, will fund the Protective Services for Individuals and Families in Difficult Circumstances program. Another 3.45 billion pesos will go to the supplementary feeding program for children enrolled in child development centers, while 2.5 billion pesos is allocated for the social pension for indigent senior citizens. The Sustainable Livelihood Program will receive 810 million pesos to help poor and marginalized households build income-generating activities. The DBM said the release complies with National Budget Circular Number 599, which requires approval from the Office of the President and submission of performance targets for new or increased budget items under the 2026 General Appropriations Act.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang confirmed that Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has not been in contact with his eldest sister, Senator Amy Marcos, for years, although he harbors no ill feelings toward her. Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said the president himself confirmed the situation following a meeting in Malacañang, noting that Senator Marcos has not been attending family gatherings or events. Senator Marcos earlier described her relationship with her brother as non-existent, while raising concerns about his health and calling for transparency from Malacañang. The palace statement comes amid a growing public perception of political divergence between the senator and the administration. The senator frequently aligns herself with positions associated with former President Rodrigo Duterte and his allies on several policy and governance issues. Despite the reported distance, Malacañang stressed that the president holds no ill feelings toward his sister.
Immediately after the Uplift Committee meeting, I approached the president and asked about this comment or statement of his sister, Senator Amy Marcos. And he said, yes, they haven't spoken for almost 3 years. She has not been attending family gatherings, family events. So yun po ang sagot ng Pangulo. Tanungin niyo po siguro si Senator Amy dyan dahil sa Pangulo po ay wala po siyang masamang anumang damdamin sa kanyang nakakatandang kapatid.
Presidential Communications Office, PCO Undersecretary Attorney Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, disaster relief operations continues for families and individuals affected by Mayon volcano's restiveness, with more than 3.19 billion pesos worth of food stockpile and standby funds earmarked for augmentation to affected local government units, or LGUs. She said the DSWD maintains enough relief goods, particularly FFPs and ready-to-eat food, or RTEF boxes. The DSWD spokesperson said that as of May 4, the DSWD has 1.66 million FFPs in major hubs, of which 266,618 boxes are prepositioned in the Bicol region. In a radio interview, Dumlao said the DSWD has already distributed 79,485 boxes of FFPs and other relief items. The DSWD has also provided cash for work or CFW and emergency cash transfer or ECT to farmers whose livelihoods have been disrupted and other affected individuals. As of writing time, 1,362 families or 4,905 persons are staying in 12 evacuation centers in the Bicol region.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippine Coast Guard or PCG has so far helped evacuate over 195,000 persons and deployed desalination units to provide drinking water amid a massive ash fall from the Mayon volcano in Albay province. In a radio interview, PCG spokesperson Commodore Noemi Cayabyab said a total of 195,363 individuals have so far been transferred or evacuated in affected municipalities, while 2 water purification or desalination units have been brought to the towns of Ginubatan and Camalig. To date, several PCG station substations and the PCG District Bicol have been placed on heightened alert, with several deployable response groups activated and ready to respond to emergencies 24/7. PCG personnel are also assisting local government units in conducting clearing operations and helping the Department of Social Welfare and Development or DSWD transport family food packs to affected barangays. To ensure the safety of residents and frontline personnel, she said N95 masks and wet rags are being used to prevent inhalation of volcanic ash. She emphasized that the aid and response delivered to Bicol is part of a whole of government approach, with several government agencies working together and complementing each other to meet the needs of the public. She also advised those in affected communities to be ready and prepared drinking water, food, medicine, flashlight, and important documents to take with them in case they are brought to evacuation centers. A large volume of pyroclastic material blanketed over 124 barangays in Albay, mostly in the towns of Camalig and Ginubatan and Ligao City following Mayon's unrest on May 2nd. To date, the DSWD said it has distributed over 117 million pesos in humanitarian assistance to affected families.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, or PHIVOLCS chief, said residents near Canlaon volcano, which spans the provinces of Negros Oriental and Negros Occidental, should not underestimate ashfall even if it appears light. PHIVOLCS recorded ash emissions from the volcano's summit crater at around 5:32 in the morning and 6:01 in the morning of Tuesday, generating grayish plumes that rose to 800 meters above the crater. In an interview, PHIVOLCS Director Teresito Bacolcol said ash emission is part of the volcano's current unrest. Ashfall, however, should not be taken lightly even if it appears light, he warned. Bacolcol also reminded the public to avoid a 4-kilometer permanent danger zone and to heed advisories from local governments. He said ash emission and ashfall are possible in all active volcanoes, but the intensity would depend on the volcano's current activity. Mayon volcano in Albay, for instance, could generate ash when lava flow or lava dome collapses, like what happened last May 2. Ash in Mayon and Canlaon volcanoes can also be generated through degassing and explosive eruptions, he added.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, Executive Secretary Ralph Recto on Tuesday accused Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste of attempting to offer massive payoffs to influence political outcomes as their escalating dispute took a more serious turn. In a strongly worded statement, Recto alleged that Leviste had offered 400 million pesos during an initial meeting to help persuade a political rival to withdraw from the election race, followed by a separate offer of up to 1 billion pesos for Batangas Governor Vilma Santos Recto to step aside from the polls. He added that the subsequent offer involving a larger amount amount was also rejected, describing both as insulting and unacceptable. The allegations, which have not been independently verified, mark a sharp escalation in the ongoing public feud between the two Batangas politicians. Recto issued a statement in response to accusations raised by Leviste in recent days, including claims related to fund distribution and political dealings in the province. Beyond the bribery claims, Recto also accused Leviste of engaging in disinformation campaigns and pursuing personal interests, including alleged land acquisition efforts in Nasugbu. The conflict traces back to earlier policy disagreements, particularly over the administration's stance against reducing value-added tax or VAT on fuel, a position previously defended by Recto due to concerns over revenue losses. Recto also floated Leviste's supposed ghost solar projects. Leviste founder of Solar Philippines faces allegations of ghost solar projects centering on 163 canceled projects and potential 24 billion pesos in penalties for failed non-operational or abandoned solar initiatives. Critics and lawmakers allege his firms secured contracts and a franchise for remote areas but failed to deliver results, leading to congressional inquiries and investigations.
Dateline Malacañang.
National Security Advisor or NSA Eduardo Oban, through his support behind Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr.'s rejection of any peace talks with the Communist Party of the Philippines, New People's Army, National Democratic Front or CPP, NPA, NDF. Oban and Teodoro's reaction stem from the call of former peace negotiators batting for a resumption of peace talks in the wake of the April 19 encounter between the military and insurgents in Toboso, Negros Occidental that left 19 people dead. He said peace talks should not be allowed to become a lifeline for a dying insurgency that has lost any semblance of integrity and belligerency. Likewise, Oban said any proposal to talk with the CPP, NPA, and the F today is stone deaf to the realities on the ground. Oban also said peace must be built in barangays, families, schools, farms, indigenous communities, and former conflict-affected areas where forms of conflict were actually suffered. Oban said the pool remains open for individuals who sincerely renounce armed struggle and return to the fold of the law.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Health assured the public that there are no recorded cases of hantavirus in the Philippines and confirmed that the 38 Filipino crew members aboard a quarantine cruise ship near Africa remain healthy. DOH Undersecretary Albert Domingo clarified the situation following reports of a cruise ship currently docked in Cabo Verde in the Atlantic Ocean, which has been placed under quarantine due to the virus. He said the risk to the general public in the Philippines remains extremely low. Domingo said historical reports from as far back as 1992 are being reviewed and there has been no recent confirmation of the virus on local shores. Symptoms often mimic other common diseases such as leptospirosis and dengue, including fever and body aches. The Bureau of Quarantine has been placed on high alert under the directive of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. to monitor the situation of the 38 Filipinos aboard the vessel. While the responsibility for repatriation lies with the cruise ship operator, Domingo assured that the government is monitoring their status. He said the vessel is currently stationary and strictly following international quarantine protocols.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. will welcome Paraguayan President Santiago Peña Palacios for an official visit to the Philippines on Monday of next week, marking a milestone in bilateral relations between the two countries. In a statement, Malacañang said Peña's visit will be the first presidential-level engagement between the Philippines and Paraguay since the establishment of diplomatic ties in 1962. Peña will be accorded official honors at the Malacañang Palace in Manila, where he and President Marcos are expected to hold a bilateral meeting. The two leaders are set to discuss opportunities to enhance defense cooperation in key areas, including trade, investment, and agriculture. The palace said a visit highlights both countries' shared commitment to democracy, the rule of law, and international cooperation. Paraguay is considered an emerging partner of the Philippines in Latin America, with both sides seeking to expand engagement and diversify economic partnerships. The Philippines and Paraguay established formal diplomatic relations on December 12, 1962, with ties spanning more than 6 decades. Malacañang said the visit underscores ongoing efforts to strengthen relations with Latin American countries and broaden the country's global partnerships.
Dateline Malacañang.
Japanese Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi and Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. reaffirmed their commitment to deepen defense cooperation between Japan and the Philippines, citing an increasingly complex regional security environment. Speaking after the Japan-Philippines Defense Ministers meeting in Makati City, Koizumi described his talks with Teodoro as highly productive. Koizumi said both sides discussed ways to expand collaboration in policy operations and defense equipment and technology in a more integrated and comprehensive manner. He highlighted Japan's recent revision of its 3 principles on the transfer of defense equipment and technology and corresponding implementation guidelines, saying these would strengthen Tokyo's contribution to regional and global peace. Koizumi also welcomed progress in bilateral defense engagement, particularly the implementation of the Reciprocal Access Agreement or RAA, which entered into force in September last year. He said by applying the RAA to the ongoing U.S.-Philippines hosted multilateral exercise, Balikatan 26, they were able to bring in equipment to the Philippines and participate in more advanced training, which had not been possible previously. He noted that the scale and sophistication of the exercise had significantly improved, including the first ever live fire training of surface-to-ship missile conducted by Japan in the Philippines, and a sharp increase in participation by the Japan Self-Defense Forces from around 140 personnel last year to about 1,400 this year. Koizumi added that Japan intends to further strengthen cooperation through the acquisition and cross-servicing agreement signed in January. Both officials also reaffirmed their opposition to unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force or coercion in the East China Sea and the South China Sea. Koizumi said they agreed to expand multilateral cooperation involving Japan, the United States, the Philippines, and Australia, including through frameworks such as Balikatan and maritime cooperative activities. He also underscored the importance of broader regional cooperation through the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. For his part, Teodoro thanked Koizumi for his visit, which coincides with the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Teodoro also affirmed the points raised by his Japanese counterpart. The DND chief also expressed gratitude for Japan's assistance during disasters.
Dateline Malacañang.
Finally, for Dateline Malacañang, the Climate Change Commission, or CCC, and the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands are moving to deepen collaboration on nature-based solutions, or NBS, as a key strategy for climate change adaptation and mitigation. In a news release, the CCC said that both Vice Chairperson and Executive Director Robert Borge and Dutch Ambassador Bariel Geratz have emphasized the role of ecosystems-based approaches in strengthening climate resilience. Borge underscored that nature-based solutions are among the most effective responses to the climate crisis. Both the CCC and the Dutch Embassy identified possible areas of cooperation, including participation in ASEAN-Netherlands cross-learning initiatives on climate adaptation and nature-based solutions to promote the exchange of technical expertise. policy approaches, and best practices across Southeast Asia. The discussions are aligned with the Philippines' National Adaptation Plan 2023 to 2050 and its nationally determined contribution, both of which highlight the scaling up of nature-based solutions as a priority strategy for building climate resilience and meeting emissions reduction targets. The CCC said that the Netherlands, known globally for its leadership in water management, climate adaptation, and integrated flood risk reduction, expressed strong support for expanding cooperation with the Philippines through knowledge sharing, capacity building, and innovation in ecosystem-based approaches. The agency underscored that partnerships with development partners like the Netherlands are critical in mobilizing climate finance, enabling technology transfer, and strengthening national and local capacity for climate action.
Dateline Malacañang.
And that is all for today's Dateline Malacañang for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. This has been Bea Gaza-de Guzman.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.